now, and then afterwards we can do some questions, because I'd like to do that. So, Dominique, if we're going right up to the northern Médoc now, the northernmost appellation, Dominique.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you to be here. I arrived in Cos d'Estournel in 2000, 25 years ago, the same year than the current owner, Michel Rébier. And I had a chance to live a very interesting period in the estate, but also I think in Bordeaux. A lot of things happened since 25 years. This estate has a very interesting history, very old. It was founded in the 18th century by Louis d'Estournel. Louis d'Estournel had 14 hectares of vine from his father in 1791, and he was convinced on the quality of this terroir, and all his life he bought vineyards, he planted, he made exchange with neighbors, and he was able to build one plot, very interesting vineyard. The situation of this terroir is very unique. It's the name Cos. The meaning is stony hill in Old French. It's coming from a small word cox in the past. And for this part of Bordeaux, it is a small mountain. It's not very high. It's 26 meters high, and it goes down south and east to 3 meters. And in the Médoc region, each meter of elevation is very, very important to understand the soil, because the soils are very, very horizontal layers. So that explains, these two slopes explain that we were able to identify 24 years ago 19 different soils, which is a lot. And it is a very interesting point of this estate to have a very interesting diversity of soil. It's very important because each soil gives a style of wine, and when you blend, you have an incredible effect. You have a blending effect, and the blend is always, it's like a miracle. It's better than the best wine before blending. And we always see that in every vintage. It is a very interesting moment when we do the blend in December before putting the wine in barrel. What's interesting in 15 also, it was interesting to have different soils. And compared to the other estates, we had the end of season, which was a little different. We had more rain in August, end of August, and also in beginning of September. And that changed the profile of the vintage for us and the end of season. And in Bordeaux, we depend completely on the climate. We are not allowed to irrigate. We don't do that. So we depend on the climate completely, and we have to do with. And we learn what is interesting. In every vintage, once a year, we learn the reaction of each block with the special condition of the vintage. And this is very interesting to understand each block and to have an idea of the reactions in each vintage. And 15, so in 15, what we saw is that the soils reaching gravels performed better than the soils reaching clay in our estates, clearly. Sometimes it can be the opposite, and in big vintage, the two soils perform well. When we did the blend, is Michel Rébier the owner, to try to have the level of quality we wanted, we were obliged to do less grand vin than usually. The grand vin is around 40% of the crop. Usually is more 50, 55, and it was necessary to save the density, the complexity of the wine, we never do compromise during the blend, and it's important. It is a decision of the owner, and we never do compromise, and we don't look for the quantity when we do the blend. And 15 is a very good example for that. The soils are very important. Also, the small hill is surrounded by a lot of wetland. Wetland has an influence because it's not water, it's not land. It's between the two, but the wetland explain evaporation, and evaporation is very interesting because it make cooler climate. And it's very interesting to make more moderation on extreme conditions. And also in the Médoc, we are very lucky to have the influence of the Gironde River. The Gironde River, not far from the estate, is 7 kilometers large, and it modifies the temperature. When we have very hot days, thanks to the Gironde River, we have 3-4 degrees less than inland. So it is very, very important for the quality of the fruit. And also during the spring, it's very important when we have danger of frost. Gironde River make warmer situation and save us from problems. So it's also a very unique place for that. Regarding the varieties, it was interesting to listen my colleagues. We have a nice part of Merlot in the estate, and we have a lot of very old Merlots. The oldest block was planted by the women during the First War, so it's more than 100 years old. And lot of the vine making the Grand Vin are 55 years old average. So we have inside vines which are 80 years old and vines which are 10, 15 years old. And it was interesting to hear the discussion about the clones. Of course, in the old vineyards, there was no clone. It was before the arriving of the clone. And they have a capacity of adaptation, which is very, very interesting to the extreme conditions. And that's why we do, like other estates, a massal selection. We started 10 years ago. And to keep this potential of the estate. And we feel that these blocks, these old vines, adapt better to the hot conditions than they did 20 years earlier. We try to adapt also, but that doesn't explain everything. We think the vine has a memory and adapt. And it's very, very important to keep this potential on the estate. So we still believe on the Merlot in this kind of terroir, it's clear. We have different keys to adapt also. Like we heard 20 years ago and 30 years ago, the challenge was to have ripe enough Cabernet Sauvignon. It was only one challenge. I learned that at school, and then we pushed that. The clone were selected for that, and also the viticulture. And we understood in vintages like 5, 9, that something happened, and we see that Cabernet Sauvignon is now ripe enough in every vintage. It is something very new. It was not the case. It was ripe enough 2 vintage every 10 vintage. Now it is opposite. And the new challenge, like we heard, it's to keep the balance and to be careful with the date of harvest and also with the extraction. And Bordeaux was never so good and so good in every vintage, and I am very optimistic. And the quality of the tannin is very ripe. It allows early tasting, earlier than in the past, but it allows also to wait the third dimension that the bottle can give after 10 years of aging in bottle at least. And this is something magic in Bordeaux also. Voilà. What is important, we are in organic conversion since 21. Bon, it is also an important step that we decided with Michel Rébier. And it has a lot of consequences, and one is that it pushes us to be much more in the vineyards. And so we have a more intimate relation with each block. And it is very important to understand the vintage and also to to manage the harvest and also the winemaking. It is an interesting point also. And we feel that the ripening of the tannin, thanks to that, is much easier than it was in the past. So it is also an interesting point. Thank you. If you have questions.
Thank you very much. Just quick before have you experimented with amphora at Cos d'Essonel? And
no, we reduced the quantity of new oak compared to 20 years ago. For the 05, we put it 90% of new oak. Now we are more around 50%. And then we use 1 year and 2 year oak. We do some very small experimentation in inox barrel, stainless steel barrel, and also wine globe. But it's too early to speak about. With the age of the barrels, we can manage, and also with how long we age in barrel. It's also a key point to manage the fruit and to try to adapt to the vintage. With a very ripe vintage, a very ripe tannin, maybe we will age a little shorter than with vintage, which has more tension.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So let's open up. Yes.